Welcome to the news and why it matters. I am Sarah Gonzalez, joined today by three lovely gentlemen. Stu, you're up first. What's your top story today?
I don't know if you guys know this, but we're within 2 years of a presidential election, so we have to freak out about it. I'm going to give you all the latest updates.
Oh, I can't wait.
Finally.
Yeah.
All right, Jason.
Possible Chinese espionage at the summer White House.
Insane. Andrew.
What do Hollywood, the state of Illinois, and Elizabeth Warren have in common? Stay tuned.
Wow.
How long does it take you to come up with these pieces every day?
4.5 hours. Spent a lot of time.
All right, a lot to get into. First, we want to thank our sponsor, American Financing. Stu, I know Glenn is, we here at The Blaze are a little bit picky about who we have as our sponsors. We don't want to endorse someone that we don't actually believe in.
Yeah, that's how the endorsements work for people, because if they see us as scam artists that endorse anything, no one believes you. American Finance is something that people have gone to a lot in our audience because, I've used them, Glenn has used them as well. And Glenn had a kind of an interesting relationship where at first he said no to them and said, no, I don't want any mortgage company because you guys don't know what you're doing. There's going to be this financial collapse and you're going to be on the wrong side of it. They kind of said, yeah, we know about the dangers. We don't do those types of loans. So they were not swept up in the whole subprime thing. They were able to stay strong, and they've been strong since. And they're people who can walk you through all the details and give you really, responsible, balanced loans, which is, of course, why
couldn't use them.
I didn't wind up using them. But they actually talk you through everything. And I think that's the biggest thing. When you're going to buy a house, there's so much. It's like jewelry. Like, you have no idea. Like, I always say to my wife, I hope your ring's a fake. Because then if you leave me, you have no value. I don't care if I paid full price for it.
That's a good marriage right there.
Exactly. I think so. I think it's pretty solid.
One of those Valentine's Day hearts?
Yeah, there you go. But it's the same thing with a mortgage. You have no idea what's going on. Luckily, they're right there to walk you through it, make sure you get, every I is dotted, every T is crossed, and you get a great deal.
American Financing, smart enough not to do business with Stu. You can go to
their slogan. I think you keep saying it.
AmericanFinancing.net, or you can call 800-906-2440. Ooh, the 2020 elections.
Yes.
Let's obsess over them.
Yes, let's obsess a little bit. In fact, let's obsess about someone who's not even running for president, Joe Biden.
God, that's so bizarre, because I literally forgot that he was not yet. He's not yet announced because
maybe because he keeps talking about himself like he's running for president.
Yes.
We're going to have a lot of conversations over the next 2 years.
Yeah.
In the event I run for president.
Out of everyone running, out of everyone who would run,
he's that bad at it. Yes,
and
you're
every
right.
poll has him leading.
And he's leading.
So declared, but
he's casting a very large shadow over
So
this race
I'm sorry,
But it's true, he has not
forgot.
entered. And I think this is right now, you're seeing this thing where people are coming out and saying that he's made them feel uncomfortable in the past. Last count, I believe, was 7. I don't know where it is right now.
He's made several million people feel uncomfortable.
Yes.
In terms of direct touch, it's been about 7.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that number could probably go up. The thing we keep saying about this is this is not like a typical Me Too situation where it's his word against hers. Everybody knows he does these things. He's done it on camera 9 million times. So everybody knows this is actually true. I'm sure it did happen to every person who said it. But there's a standards argument to be had there. We do have an apology-ish sort of statement from Joe Biden. If you happen to miss it, here it is.
Social norms have begun to change. They've shifted. And the boundaries of protecting personal space have been reset. And I get it. I hear what they're saying. I understand it. And I'll be much more mindful. That's my responsibility. And I'll meet it. But I'll always believe governing, quite frankly, life for that matter, is about connecting with people. I've worked my whole life to empower women. I've worked my whole life to prevent abuse. I've written, and so the idea that I can adjust to the fact that personal space is important, more important than it's ever been, is just not thinkable. I will.
It's a weird world we live in.
But I do remember that time in the 50s when they stopped handshaking and they just sniffed people's hair.
Yeah,
Like, that's
right?
what he's saying. That's changed. We've
Well,
moved
well,
on from that.
We've reset the boundories of personal
when
space.
did
we
that
used to
happen,
be able
Sarah?
to sniff people's hair all the time.
Yeah, when did that
I
happen?
like to
Now
put my
it's
feet in
reset.
other people's pockets. I'm doing it to Stu right now. You can't tell, but I'm just like, this. Can I put my
I
foot
can
in
tell.
Stu's pocket? I bet I can. And like, real quick, did you know it today? And this is true. This is on the internet. It is National Hug a Newsperson Day.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yes.
So
which you can't- oh
this is
no!
all
Oh
fine.
no!
This is all fine. I'll hug all of you over the course of this hour. And if I were Joe Biden, I would just stay here.
You are staying there, just so you're aware.
I think my theory on Joe Biden is I think maybe his doctor had meant to give him blood thinner, but gave him ecstasy. And so he's just constantly wanting to run through. This is fine. Again, this is National Hug a Newsperson Day.
There's no
So this is
rubbing of
fine.
shoulders included in this. What is you're trying? I'm the next one on this
Oh,
list.
yeah.
I'm
It's going to be interesting, too, what I do. I don't know. I haven't come up with it yet.
So I actually tend to believe Biden on this one. I mean, I completely believe this is just who he is. He doesn't mean anything bad by it. If someone doesn't tell him that if there's something wrong at the time, he's not going to know.
You think that sniffing women's hair is?
Look, okay, so let me take a step back here for a second, because this is an interesting attack. First of all, I believe that literally no one who is complaining about this right now actually cares about it. Maybe the 7 people who've actually brought this up care, but they only care because they want to stop him from being president. If they cared, they would have made a big deal about this at
And
another
they generally
point.
say that it wasn't sexual. Like Lucy Flores, who's the one that kicked it off this week, said that it was uncomfortable.
Wasn't at all. It was just
inappropriate, but it
uncomfortable.
wasn't sexual.
Exactly. And so, the thing we all have to remember here is if Joe Biden wins this nomination, none of them will say a word about this. It is not an actual important thing for them. This is a weapon to use against Joe Biden to stop him, hopefully, from getting in the race. So part one of this attack is more obvious. They want to stop him from getting in the race. He's leading all the polls. If they can stop him now, all these other candidates are going to get a nice boost and they have a better chance of winning the nomination. But part two of this is a little bit more subtle, and it's just as important. The reason why Joe Biden has had success over his career, the reason why he's actually leading these polls, in many ways, is his strength as a retail politician. He's a guy that walks into a room. He's a guy that does make physical contact with each voter. I was listening to one of these shows that's been talking about, I think it was The View, where they said he was the only politician that came in and he went through the audience and shook everyone's hand in the audience.
Whether they wanted to or not.
Whether they wanted to or not. He was shaking all sorts of things.
3.5 hours, he barred the doors.
Yeah, exactly. And if you look at it, there's sort of a generational gap there. When they interview people about this, many people say, the older generation in particular, like, it was great. Like, he was nurturing, he was nice. It's a little bit different. One of the women who came out and said I was made to feel uncomfortable said, everyone kept coming up to me afterwards saying I was so lucky. And I started thinking, should I feel like I'm lucky? Well, it's like, obviously all those people thought it was okay, whatever was happening. And that doesn't mean that, everyone has a right to be able to say, dude, I have my personal space, get off of me. But number one, you kind of have to say that at some point in some way. We kind of talked about that the other day. But the number two thing is, what's happening here is the rest of the field and operatives and people who are supporting other candidates are coming out and saying, Joe Biden he touches people and it makes me uncomfortable. Number one, it hurts his campaign. Number two, he may not enter the race. But number three, if he does, he's handcuffed. This is like the way he's engaged with voters for 50 years, and he's not going to be able to hug a person on tour because every time he touches someone, they're going to take a picture of him, and it's going to be all over the internet.
Maybe it'll look like he's got demonic possession and he's stopped the last moment where he no, pull back.
Like the
before I touch
hand,
him. Yeah,
Jim carries the hand.
Oh no.
Yeah, that's going to potentially do damage to his campaign, and I think that's another part of this. I think very little of it is actual concern about what Joe Biden does.
Yeah, I like that point you made because you can't underestimate that. I remember I interned on a campaign when I was in college on some judge or something like that, and the one thing I remember is nothing I did on my internship. But when George Bush was running for governor at the time, and he was the only candidate that spoke at that fair, there was a ton of candidates that spoke. He was the only one that did that same thing. After his speech, he got down off the stage, shook everyone's hand, probably tapped him on the shoulder, looked them in the eye, and you did have that feeling of, wow, like he actually stayed for me. You didn't think he was staying for everyone. You had that feeling, oh, he stayed for me.
Yeah.
And it's very, very effective. Two, my second other point on this is, I don't think anybody really believes that he is a perv and he's doing this because of some kind of sexual thing. That seems kind of ridiculous to me. Everybody has their creepy old like uncle. Everyone has that. That's inappropriate stuff. That's true.
So we had a conversation yesterday. Andrew was here. Neither of you were. I said, did you guys see the creepy Uncle Joe ad where he was touching the kids? I said, if that were my daughter, I would find that to be wholly inappropriate, and I think it's borderline. Obviously, he's not sexually assaulting her, but I think that the touching of the young children in the places that he touched them and kissed them was of sexual nature.
Really? I would not have been happy with that, but I don't think he was doing it for any kind of sexual thing. You think he was thinking this is getting me off or something like that?
First of all, ew, thank you for that image.
You're the one that brought
it up.
I'm not saying he's like getting, I'm just saying I felt like the touching was of sexual nature. I'm not saying that was like how he, I'm
thinking of a way to
this feels more uncomfortable than I hugged her. Yeah. this is the most uncomfortable part of the show so far.
It can be perceived that way, and that's why it makes it so attackable.
He's not getting off from that. But I'm saying I felt like it was over the line in sexual nature. Obviously, he could have gone farther.
Yeah, I mean, look, he shouldn't have been doing it, and I think it was it was definitely creepy to me. It was creepy to, I think, a lot of people watching it.
What would you do if someone did that to your daughter? You saw videos of doing that to your underage daughter.
I would whisper, anything you do to her, I do to you. And then I'd follow him around.
I mean, that's what I'm saying.
Hours.
Like,
I would not want my daughter close to him again. I mean, and again, part of it might be an excess of caution, right? I mean, because you don't normally see it. I can't blame you for taking it that way. I tend to think he has used physical contact in a way to make people feel special. And that's a statement about how amazing he thinks he is, right? Like Joe Biden is Joe Biden, and the fact that I will hug
Eskimo kiss Joe Biden.
Also,
You wouldn't want an Eskimo kiss from Joe Biden.
No awareness whatsoever of the people around him and their nonverbal cues, because you see them
like
away.
looking down and pulling away. Yeah, it's very, very strange.
My biggest issue is the double standard. That's my biggest issue.
Yeah, we talked about that yesterday.
Anybody else, they would be freaking out like it was on the right. They'd be freaking out.
If they had pictures of Roy Moore doing this, do you think he would come close to winning a primary?
George H.W. Bush that's in a wheelchair, just because that's where he puts his arms. They said it was inappropriate. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
But I suspect if Mike Pence had a similar problem, I think we would be hearing about it louder and in all caps.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes, I would say. If you've ever watched It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, there is the dentist system. Are you guys familiar with the dentist system?
I vaguely remember this.
Okay,
it's an acronym, right?
It is an acronym, and it has. I think Joe Biden is attempting to do the dentist system to the entire country. Number one is demonstrate value, right? He's a valuable guy. He can.
You don't have slides for these?
I know. I should have. I just thought of it.
It's etched in his heart.
E is engage physically. And N is nurture dependence. So this guy is like, he's got the first three nailed. He's doing
You know what? You need some welfare reform.
Yeah, exactly. It's working. It's working. It's a really creepy thing and probably ends in some sort of serial murder. But other than that, it should be fine. Everything's going to work out great.
Wow, thank you for that last word.
Before we go off of Joe Biden, I just want to throw out, I did a whole episode on my podcast, Something's Off with Andrew Heaton, about him yesterday, and we actually get into what he thinks about stuff too. I know that we'll all have time to do that over the course of the show, but we actually get into some of his policies and things. So if you want reasons to have ammunition at Joe Biden unrelated to this, come listen to that show.
All right, back in a minute.
Did you just substance us? Is that what that was? Substance.
No, that was just naked ambition to get viewers.
Okay.
You were thrown under the bus, but it hasn't.
No, not just because.
Before we get back into the conversation, I want to thank our sponsor, Home Title Lock. Hi, guys. We're on live television.
Welcome to the show.
Nice for you to join us.
Sarah.
Home Title Lock. Home title fraud is apparently a thing that I never knew about until they became our sponsor.
So criminals act like they're just caressing the shoulders of your home and your title. And they come in and they sniff the hair of your home. And you don't want that to happen. You need to protect yourself against the Joe Bidens of the world. When it comes to your title. Home title lock, it is actually one of the fastest growing crimes in America. And, it's like, a lot of people think they have identity theft protection or insurance or maybe their bank can protect them, but none of that actually does anything. You have to make sure you get protected from this specific thing from Home Title Lock. It's the only place that can do it. And people have seen over and over again, they'll get control of the deed and the title and the mortgage, and they'll be able to borrow against the equity and do all sorts of things.
Or sell your house.
Or sell your house out from under you.
And then new owners come up and they're like, hey, we're here to move in.
The craziest examples actually have people coming back from maybe it's a vacation home. They come back to the home to check it out, and there's just people living in it, and they have the deed. And they're like, well, what? Now what? They have all the paperwork. Yeah. So that's years of unwinding that in the legal system. Don't let that happen to you. Get protected first.
You can go to HomeTitleLock.com, get a $100 search for free when you sign up. So that way you can find out if you have already been a victim of home title fraud. You wouldn't know it unless you go to HomeTitleLock.com. Jason, I just want to point out, I'm going to sell you out for a second. You have like the world's tiniest notes on the table right now.
What are you talking about? There's no notes here.
It's like the world's tiniest Post-it note.
Flashback to sophomore year.
With the tiniest writing.
How dare you?
All right, so a Chinese, what's going on?
Oh, is this the Mar-a-Lago thing?
Yeah.
So it's such a bizarre story. And I wasn't even really following it, but it actually started, I guess, a few weeks ago, and it came out during the Robert Kraft, massage parlor prostitution ring thing. And
obviously, Robert Kraft took precedence.
Oh yeah, I had nothing to do with that. Please continue.
So to make a long story short, there was a string of, I guess, massage parlors that were also like kind of doubling as prostitution brothel type places. And Robert Kraft was going to one of these. Well, one of the former owners was a woman named Cindy Yang. And I guess she had already sold it, so she wasn't still involved in it. But when her name popped up, journalists started looking into her to see who she was. Well, she owns this company that's on one of my tiny little notes here, the GYUS Investment LLC, which makes absolutely no sense if you see
Catchy.
that. Yeah, it's catchy, right? He just rolls off the tongue. But it's a company that, so after the president started having issues with the press and all the bad press started coming out and a bunch of organizations started dropping off of doing events at Mar-a-Lago, she stepped in and started facilitating bringing in people from overseas. She's Chinese. She started selling it as Chinese nationals. People from all over the world can come over, kind of schmooze around with U.S. politicians, maybe even if you're lucky, meet the president, and just do your ballroom event at Mar-a-Lago. And if you've been to Mar-a-Lago, it's like beautiful. I've been there once, and it's like really, it's beautiful. So she started doing this and started making a lot of money. So pretty soon she's taking a lot of selfies and stuff with a ton of politicians. That's what started getting blasted out all over social media. I don't think any of the politicians actually knew who the heck she was. She just showed up at the event she helped coordinate and took a selfie. It's like, hey Joe, Biden was over there and snapped a picture. So that's who this woman is. So on Saturday, a Chinese national was caught in the living room area of Mar-a-Lago. So the way Mar-a-Lago is set up, there's there's a portion of security right out where you first drive in. I think there's another level of security right like at the door. If you get through those two, then you're pretty much in the living room. And that's what they call the main lobby area. You've got access to the entire resort from there. You can go anywhere. You can actually go, and I've walked up to the president before he was president, his suite. You can just walk straight up to it if you want to. I'm sure they've added maybe a little more security, but I've heard that's kind of how the feel he wants to keep there. So it's pretty wide open. So this Chinese national had made her way into the living room to get access to anywhere. Well, the receptionist that was inside there, to help schedule stuff, for the guests, she was like, hey, can I help you? And she noticed she was acting kind of weird. She goes, oh yeah, I'm going to the pool. And she didn't have any kind of luggage like that to make it seem like that was credible.
Suit, right?
Or didn't even have a bathing suit. She also said, oh, well, I'm here to go to the such and such event. And this event wasn't even a thing going on at the time. So
they couldn't have even done enough homework to know what events were going on at that particular time.
That's a very good point. I want to come back to that.
Okay.
I'm here for the golf game.
Right.
There.
That would have worked.
Welcome, spies.
So they searched this woman. They detained her. They found that she had a laptop. She had a external hard drive, 4 cell phones, 2 passports on her. In the laptop, there was malicious, cyber attack type software on this laptop. Wow. So she was definitely up to no good. The event that she said that she was there to go to was the same event that Cindy Yang had promoted, I guess, several months before to try to get people to go to. Now, they had canceled that event when she started getting all the bad press. So it didn't even exist anymore. But for some reason, I guess she hadn't got the memo yet.
I believe she said her friend Charles told her to go.
Her friend Charles, which they think is Charles Lee, which is an associate of Cindy Yang. So they don't really have any kind of connection. It's just like they blast out these social media campaigns and say, come on over, buy your tickets. And then they come over. Now, anyway, so if this is a Chinese spy, I'm so glad for that because they are very incompetent.
Yeah.
I mean, this is awful. Which pretty much means that it's probably not a Chinese spy.
Yeah. It's just a sign that the security is faulty, right? I mean, that sort of stuff shouldn't happen even if she's not a Chinese spy.
Because if she was a spy, I feel like, I mean, we do have the technology available to get them the information that they need to know that, hey, don't go in for it because such and such event has been canceled.
Yeah, you would think
they could get that information relatively quickly.
You would think the intelligence community within China would be able to say that, hey, the event's been canceled, abort,
exactly.
come back.
This is why I really appreciate our friends over in Russia who have the respect and decency to send over hot redheads to seduce our politicians.
That's the way
Thank
it's
you,
done.
Russia. That's how gentlemen conduct espionage. They don't send someone to a golf course to hack someone's laptop. No, they get naked. Thank you.
It's a profound stand.
And that's another good point. Like even like Russia would never try this. Russia would never go anywhere near the president, wherever the president said. They would go through some secondary person or whatever. That's just kind of the way it's done. My guess is it possibly could have been some kind of corporate espionage. Something like that. Some government wanted, some company wanted to know about deals. They get advance heads up on if he was going to rule a certain way on the trade negotiations, which makes a whole lot more sense, being that they're just about to talk about that coming up pretty soon. There's a meeting scheduled. So if they got a recording device, or if they could put some kind of spy software on the hotel server to get some kind of communication and tip them off. That's probably what this is. But you're exactly right. It's more of a critique on the security at a place like that. It's nothing. There's nothing new with the president going to places like this in other administrations and allowing the business as usual to happen in whatever area he goes to. The problem is that he goes there a lot, and if they're also kind of pimping out these events to foreign governments or to other countries where foreign governments can take advantage of that. That's a very, very big security risk.
Yeah, I also I don't know that I would want to go to Mar-a-Lago as a visitor knowing that, hey, the president could show up at any minute and the security there is really terrible.
Insane.
Yeah, and then I mean, surely he's got a lot of people out to get him. So as a tourist, I'd be like, yeah, I'm thinking that I want to avoid that.
Plus the humidity. You have to go to Florida. Go to Camp David.
So weird.
Mar-a-Lago is beautiful, though. We went there. I went with a client a while back, and
Did
it
you?
was
Because you
gorgeous.
haven't told us 3 times
During
on
this
this
thing?
one program.
Well, I was picking a story that had one that I had some credibility on. A had been there, and it was
Finally.
It totally
I've been waiting.
That was 4.
We've been waiting for you to finally tell a story where you had any kind of credibility whatsoever. Back in a minute.
You ain't getting another one.
Right, Stu, we were talking about 2020 earlier. Let's talk about the Q1 totals for fundraising.
Yes, there are a bunch of the quarter's over, so that we're going to get all these numbers. They have to be in by April 15th. We have the people who are proud of them releasing them now. That's the difference. Like if you're not proud of them, you wait till April 15th. If you're proud, you get them out of the way. Here's
Get that extra bump.
Here's what we have first. Andrew Yang, is 1.7 million. Now that doesn't sound like a big number, but for a guy like Andrew Yang, it's a pretty good raise and a very low per person.
People are wasting their money.
Pete Buttigieg at 7 million is a great number for the mayor of South Bend, Indiana, running for president. That is a very good number, and it's Buttigieg. So actually, boot, obviously, edge, like the edge of this table, edge again. Boot, edge is essentially the way you're supposed to do it.
Buttigieg.
Yes.
Thank you.
First of all, I heard it as boot a judge.
Looks like
which is,
Buttigieg.
Yeah, I know. That's why it's a thing, because it looks different than it is.
I'm saying Buttigieg.
So Beto O'Rourke, $9.4 million. Now, that doesn't sound like a great number for him, but he came into the race late. He has the highest per day donation number, which is what he's trying to promote.
Well, his first day was 6
He
million.
did 6 million and only 9.4 till the end of March, which is not a great number. Kamala Harris at 12 million, which is good, and she's actually going after the big donors. She's the only one that seems to be unafraid to say, yeah, I'm going after big donors. I'm not just going after smaller donations. And of course, Bernie leads the way by a pretty large margin at 18.2 million. Now he was there for the whole quarter, pretty much. I mean, there's reasons why he's that far ahead. As Beto will point out, his number was better on a day-to-day basis. But I mean, Bernie is a fundraising machine. For this guy who doesn't like. I mean, money in politics is such a bad thing, yet he's leading everybody in fundraising by a lot. With the exception, of course, of Donald Trump, who's leading everybody by 2 or 3 times that amount.
Yeah, still, Bernie's fundraising dollars, man, that scares me.
Please no.
Redistribute some of that fundraising cash. You
Yeah.
should be all
great
about that.
point.
All the other candidates
From
should have some.
2020.
I mean, you're telling me, Andrew Yang doesn't deserve some of that cash?